All right, everybody, close your mouths and open your ears because I'm Rob.
And I'm John.
And wait, who's that?
Hi, I'm Cody.
Oh, and that's Cody, right? And this is the So Yeah podcast. All right, guys, welcome down to the So Yeah podcast via Zoom with me, your host, all caps Rob, and I'm joined by my co-host John, also known by the ladies as That's Him Officer, the podcast where we discuss all things media and the hot topics surrounding it, from music and movies to everything in between. Basically, if it's made to entertain, we're going to ramble about it. John and I are a couple of screen junkies, also known as washed out millennials who never amounted to a thing. We look at a lot of screens, watch a lot of content, and therefore have a lot of feelings, and decided to discuss those feelings on a podcast in the vain attempt to be successful. And guys, this is going to be episode 3, for which we know we are late for. Unfortunately, life did happen to us in August. I had an injury. I am now semi-recovered and back at it with John and our special guest for the evening, Cody, the Codester. Hi, Codester.
I don't like that name for him.
What it do, hip kids in the neighborhood?
Isn't he just the homeless guy that works out, beside the dumpsters behind the building here?
Yeah, but he hands out good candy. So
Candy. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Only the best sweetie sweetums.
There you go, man. Anyway, yeah, Cody is joining us from 200 miles away?
Yeah, like 280, almost 300 miles.
Yeah, but we go way back. He and I met once 17 years ago. So he and I are the best of friends right now.
A friendship that stretches through the ages.
Exactly. And John and I have 3 years of friendship together. So, unfortunately, Cody is my main man. So, he's probably going to replace you at some point.
I've known Cody since he was 0.
No.
It's worse because John's known me since since I was born, essentially.
I was still wearing diapers. He was wearing diapers.
It was a relatable topic to talk about.
Yeah.
You were in diapers. He was in diapers. I was raised in the actual country, so I was wearing nothing probably. But but anyway, obviously, guys, we're coming at y'all via Zoom to talk to Cody, and Cody is here because episode 3 is starting probably a 6-part mini series on our show that's going to be all about Batman, and Cody is our resident Batman expert compared to me and John anyway. And I am the humble casual observer in that I am not all that familiar with it. I do enjoy Batman, but at best I've seen probably a total of 5% of what's actually out there. Cody, you've been a Batman fan, your whole life?
Yeah, a majority of my life. Batman the Animated Series is where I was really introduced to Batman. Allegedly, I was taken to see 89 Batman at some point, but I have no memory of this. So Batman the Animated Series is my introduction, and I kind of fell in love with the character there.
Yeah. John, how about you?
I was told the same thing about, like Cody said, I was taken to the 89 Batman. I don't remember it. My parents told me I screamed a lot. That's probably why I don't like Tim Burton. But the first memory I have is of the animated series.
Well,
I think the first episode I saw was, which we'll talk a little bit more about, it was the episode about Baby Doll. So that was the first episode I remember.
Well, I was born in 92, so I missed those first couple of movies. My first introduction, as a kid, you see the Batman toys in the toy aisle and whatnot, but I was not allowed to watch the Batman series as a kid because my parents thought it was too dark, which backfired because now I love all things dark. But
it was really because they didn't want you to see Danny DeVito.
That's true too. But my first introduction to Batman was back in the day, whenever the department stores would actually have the new releases playing on their big screen TVs. They had Batman and Robin playing, and so I watched the end of Batman and Robin while Freeze and George Clooney tried to duke it out and make it look exciting. But my first actual time sitting down and watching a Batman movie was I got this. The story does not get any better. I bought Batman Forever on VHS, which is arguably the worst Batman film I've ever seen ever in my life ever. But The Dark Knight was almost out, and I just got excited to watch Heath Ledger play this part that everybody was saying at the time, oh, he killed himself because he was so freaked out by it, you know? So I'm like, cool, because I was a stupid teenager. And
as you do, you know.
Yeah, you know, and so I bought it just because I was also a Jim Carrey fan, and I'm like, cool, Jim Carrey plays a bad guy. And then at the end, I'm like, wow, Jim Carrey shouldn't play that kind of a bad guy. So yeah, so my first introduction was I was a kid sneaking a peek at the big screen TV whenever my dad wasn't looking, followed by probably the worst Batman film ever made, and then The Dark Knight, which made me say officially, because I'm not the biggest superhero fan. You know, I like them, but like I don't love them. But I did say, okay, well, Batman is now the superhero that I watch. So that was my introduction to him anyway.
There are worse introductions.
I remember realizing that I watched a bad movie for the first time when I watched Batman and Robin in the theaters.
Yeah, that was for me too. That was about the time I realized that bad movies exist. I didn't see it. I saw it. I think my parents rented it. My dad didn't even bother to want to try and see it in theaters. I don't think he wanted to. Somehow, I think he knew it wasn't going to be that great. So being taken to the theaters to see it, I just remember him being like, we'll rent it when it comes out on VHS.
The ending part for me was just like, my parents were just not even paying attention at that point. And I realized, I looked at them, I was like, this movie sucks.
How old were you, John?
I don't know. What that would have been. What year was that? 95, 96, Cody, when that came out?
I thought it was 97.
Might be 97.
Hang on, let me see.
I might be right. 97 might be when it came out.
I would have been 9 or 10. So
Batman and Robin, 1997. Yep. So you were
McDonald's had all that promotional junk for it.
Like the special glasses and stuff. Yeah.
Back when they were good toys, huh?
Yes.
No, they sold like glass cups. I still have my Batman and Robin glass cup somewhere.
Oh, that's beautiful. I got to see that. So I have my Rockefeller mug, and now you got a Batman and Robin glass. That's awesome.
All right. Well,
all right. Legit, huh?
It was pretty cool design.
Legit, honestly. Yeah. Best part of the film.
Well, anyway, let's go ahead and get into our topics for today, guys. We could sit here and just ramble, but the thing is, I like this. Rambling is good because now our headspace is in the right place to continue the actual episode.
Who are you?
Huh?
Who are you?
Who are you? I'm Batman. Is that funny enough? Okay, so we have 4 hot topics to go over today, guys. I feel like we didn't do a good enough job actually keeping the hot topics sectioned out in the Rocketfire episode. So we are going to go over 4 topics, and we're actually going to start just by introducing, once again, I am a bit new to the series. So
you are on the council, but we do not grant you the rank of master.
Oh, well, you know what? First of all, thank you for solidifying how we're a trio of nerds here. But unlike Anakin, I will humbly take my seat and not argue because you are right. I am no master compared to you and John.
We do have the high ground, sir.
Yeah, yes, you do. Yes, you do. But John, you underestimate my power. But anyway, so the topic for part 1 of the Batman miniseries, guys, is going to be the animated series and the Mask of Phantasm, the first animated Batman movie. Now, just getting into this here, I won't lie, I was skeptic because I've never seen an episode of the Batman series. I have never seen the movie. John sent me links to 3 episodes, and then he told me to rent the movie, which I did on YouTube. And I did go in skeptical, but it was nice being wrong. I'll put it like that. It was nice being wrong.
Because you are.
Yeah, because I am. I am very wrong here. Well, first of all, this film is old enough to have that old school Bugs Bunny Warner Brothers logo. And, a lot of films that are that old, especially animated films, do not hold up, in my opinion. A lot of them don't. And plus, whenever I read this thing was described as a romantic superhero film, my arms were crossing at that point. my arms crossing, cheeks tightening, but only
Exactly.
yeah. I didn't have the highest hopes, but anyway, I ended up with just this dumbfounded look, jaw agape, mesmerized stare at the screen. And at the end, I actually I am John and said that was arguably the best animated film I ever saw in my life. So it was a refreshingly different storyline than much of the mainstream, to Batman or not to Batman crisis he was having. So all in all, yes, I loved it.
It's arguably one of the best movies.
I'd agree to that.
Yep. Not animated, just movies.
Yeah. That's very debatable, John, but all right.
All right. So let's talk about my opinion then. I grew up on the series. I watched the first 2 seasons as it was being played on Fox Kids in the 90s. I loved it. I mean, that was the characters you voiced, Batman and Joker. Those are the voices I hear in my head when I think of Batman and Joker. And like we've already discussed, I struggled to pay attention during the actual movies, but the series was short enough for me to keep my attention span going. And I already mentioned earlier that, I don't remember watching the 89 Batman. It was maybe later on when I finally rewatched it, I saw it. And to be honest with you, as a kid, I struggled to watch the Mask of Phantasm because I had a short attention span. But when I got older, I rewatched and I realized, wow, this is amazing.
You were a would-be Gen Zer with a short
yeah, well,
span.
maybe. I don't know about that. But it did build my basis for loving crime dramas and stuff. Because he is a detective and he does show his detective skills in the actual show, which is, you don't get to see that in many of the other Batmans. It's more about who can Batman beat up.
And Cody, what are your comments, sir? Or did we lose Cody?
No, you didn't lose me. I'm still here.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah, with the animated series, like I said at the beginning, Batman, that was like the first Saturday morning cartoon I got hooked on. I love, and it kind of probably helped with that, but I love like classic pulp adventures, and I love the gothic feel. Gotham felt gothic, and the noir tone. So it really spoke to my sensibilities, and what I love in stories in general, not just Batman stories. So that was fantastic, and then it also informed like a lot of my feelings on storytelling and writing and characters, because I find myself because I like to write short stories, and I find myself going back to that series all the time, like taking notes on things they did to be able to tell really good stories in like a closed amount of time. The creators are actually quoted as saying like they wanted to make each episode of the animated series like a 22-minute miniature movie, and a lot of the episodes really feel that way. And I feel like Batman's never really been done better, like as a consolidated character. And I also really appreciate that both the film and the series as a whole were unafraid to embrace a lot of the more out there sci-fi comic concepts from Batman, because a lot of the modern takes on Batman is very real, it's very grounded.
Yeah,
it kind of feels a little bit like they're ashamed of the fact that he like comes from a colorful comic book background. But the show and the movie, they kind of embrace it and they roll with it, and it makes the world and the characters and everything that much richer for embracing that aspect of the Batman mythos, so to speak.
Is it bad, Cody, that I actually kind of appreciated that some of the newer stuff tried to make Batman and the whole idea of a superhero existing seem real by taking out the sci-fi elements? Like, does that make me a bad person?
No, it doesn't make you a bad person. I love science fiction and I love out there elements. So whenever it's introduced in something, it always gets me excited. It may be a personal preference, but also, I don't know, it speaks more to the comics as well, because, Batman's not just fighting crime bosses or the Joker for the 15,000th time. He could be investigating like a crime, and it kind of like escalates into like something crazy, like, I don't know, like an alien invasion, or Poison Ivy is growing a bunch of mutant plants under the city, and he's got to figure that out. It's always interesting to see Batman, because he's just a guy. So seeing Batman run up against something that's outside of the scope of what a human, even like a rich one with a bunch of gadgets, can handle, it really pushes him to his limits and forces him to think outside of the box, because punching it isn't going to solve the problem. And usually driving his Batmobile over it isn't going to solve the problem. So it really takes him to a limit and makes him dig deep and think outside of the box and get creative when facing down something that could steamroll him if he just walks in like he does with like a thug off the street.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's go ahead and get into our first hot topic of the day, guys. And that's going to be, is The Mask of Phantasm the best Batman movie ever? Now, we're going to start this off by, obviously, I think anybody who hears this podcast is going to be a Batman veteran of sorts. But just because we are a facts podcast as well, we have some fun facts listed here, and either John or Cody can recite them off to you, and then we can get into the actual debate of if it's the best one or not.
I'll go ahead and do it, I guess.
Do it.
So basically, I wanted to compare it to the Tim Burton films because I felt like it probably would have a better audience and critic score, and it did. Rotten Tomatoes gave it an 85, and the audience for Rotten Tomatoes gave it an 88. If you compare it to the 89 Batman, it had a critic score of 73 and an audience of 84. So that's pretty good. And I which I didn't realize this, Batman Returns apparently had a better critic score than the 89 Batman at 81, and the audience score was just 1% shy, 83. So it's definitely different. People are saying they do appreciate this movie better, in my opinion. Now, I want to talk about something because I talked to Cody a little bit about it. Cody, was Danny Elfman involved any in the movie or in the cartoon itself, or was he just inspired?
No, so they got the license to use his initial theme, like the Batman theme, but all the other music was composed mostly by a woman named Shirley Walker. She did all the themes for Batman the Animated Series and the movie. So the idea to add the choir on top of all of it, that was all her, Shirley Walker. She's not alive anymore. I think she passed away in 2006. But she was the one that scripted. She's actually won a few awards for the soundtrack she laid on some of the series and the film.
I do want to chime in here real fast. It's funny because Danny Elfman also did the Edward Scissorhands movie, and when I was first, when I first turned this film on and watched it, and I heard that choir, I'm like, that sounds like Edward Scissorhands. And not 5 minutes later, John IMs me, because I'm talking to him the whole time that I'm watching it, and says Danny Elfman was involved. And I'm like, yep, that's Danny Elfman, all right. Sure enough.
Yep. Was the choir actually Danny Elfman though, Cody?
Sure as heck sounded like him.
I'd have to look that up, honestly, but I don't think so. I think that was all her.
Watch the ending scene of Edward Scissorhands and then watch the opening credits and tell me it's not Danny Elfman.
No, I'm really familiar with Edward Scissorhands, and I know it does sound similar. You are right. But on the film credit here, I'm trying to look. She is credited with scoring Batman Mask of the Phantasm. That's one of her scoring credits.
Okay.
So
cool.
Maybe she was copycatting more in that one, trying to build her own first.
Because it was a film, she may have been leaning more into Danny Elfman-isms to make it seem more cinematic in scope.
All right. Well, anyway, Cody, what are your thoughts on this movie?
Mask of Phantasm? Mask of Phantasm is just a really good Batman film. I feel like for me personally to date, it's the best Batman film we've ever received as far as the treatment of the character. It really delved into Bruce's psychology. I remember like the scene that really spoke to me and made me understand Bruce Wayne and Batman a little better is the sequence when he's at the graveyard, he's falling in love with Andrea, and the rain's just coming down, and he's begging his parents.
Oh, it's a great scene.
let him do this. And that one line, please, I never counted on being happy. Like that tells you so much with like a single sentence about where Bruce Wayne's head state is at. And that tells you so much about how he is like as Batman, because he's not Batman to be happy. He doesn't think he's ever going to be happy. And so like that just, I don't know, that was just like a really changing moment for me when I first saw that. And
I want to agree with you on that, Cody. I have never seen a Batman film where Bruce Wayne's story, I could tell that the strings of my heart were being tugged ever in my life. Like that scene was a magical scene.
It was. And then the moment that compounded that was when he finally becomes Batman. The moment, like any other superhero film, like treats the moment when Batman first shows up as like grand and epic and you know, adventurous and exciting and kind of mysterious. This film treats it like a tragedy. It is a horrifying moment. It is a moment of loss. Like when he turns around and he's Batman, sure, it's still grand and epic, but you can't help but feel kind of down about it. And then Alfred's reaction to seeing him as Batman, like, is like, oh my God. Yeah. Like it's almost more the birth of a monster than the birth of a superhero. It's kind of how it's treated and shot. It's in deep shadow. Yeah. You know, you never actually see Bruce Wayne, the person, in the shot. He's covered in darkness, enshrined in shadows. And so when he puts on the mask, it just kind of seals the deal, seals his fate, and it's really good uses really good cinematography to kind of drive home the fact that he is Batman now. Like there is no going back. There's no turning away. This is it. Batman is his fate. Perhaps it always was. Yeah. And there's nothing that could stop it. And
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, you know, I really agree because this film kind of implies that he never would have been Batman had his heart not been broken. And so, like, when he first walks out, I can feel the bitterness in him in every stride he takes toward Alfred. Like, it captured the emotion of him becoming Batman because he had nothing else to live for at that point. And he was like, I'm Batman. Get out of my way. Like, that was so powerful, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Bruce Wayne is dead. There is only the Batman. Mm-hmm. An interesting fact about that film, I don't know if, John, if you were going to cover it later, but it wasn't meant to go to theaters. It was originally going to be straight to DVD. And then at the last minute, Warner Brothers was just like, yeah, let's put it on the theater. Let's put it on the theater screen, silver screen, which is VHS. Also VHS. Yeah, I was supposed to go straight to VHS, not DVD. You're right. History check. Thank you. And they didn't. They decided to do this, but they also did a really crappy job of promoting the film. So no one really knew it went to theaters. So it actually got really bad box office returns. But that was mostly because, like, not very many people knew it went to theaters.
I guarantee you that was Warner Brothers management doing that.
Oh, 100%. 100%. That just screams big production company management.
I forget where I read this, but actually, John, you are right. Somebody in the corporate level just kind of threw their hands up last minute and say, you know what, let's put it in theaters. And it was only like a few weeks out before it was supposed to come out. So they had no time for promotion. They just kind of put out some posters and said, here it is. And as a result, it did a lot worse than how it deserved to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it would have done, if they had promoted it properly, it probably would have given I feel like it would have given like a decent Disney movie a run for its money.
Well, John, I think it's time for you. Yeah. John, what are your thoughts on the film?
Well, as a kid, I don't remember it too much because, like I said, my attention span was pretty crappy back then. I watched it again when I was a teenager, loved it. Watched it again recently, loved it. To me, like I've already talked about it, it's the love story part and the crime drama that really brought it together for me. Him being torn really helped it. I mean, you wouldn't have expected to get that kind of personality out of a movie that was PG intended probably for kids, but I'm just surprised by how much they did to build that story. And I love it covered the subject Andrea, how she got away, and the mystery of the Phantasm. For a while, because I had forgotten the movie, I forgot Andrea was Phantasm. Hope that's no spoilers for the people who haven't watched it, but it kind of took that away for a little bit. But, you know,
I honestly didn't see her twist becoming Phantasm coming. Like, it shocked me when it happened. And I felt dumb for being shocked, but it did shock me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they did a pretty decent job of making you really believe it was her father.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Now you say that, I kind of felt that way the whole way through until I started at the end. I was like, wait a second, it's Andrea. It's got to be Andrea. But really, one thing that sold me on it, like I've been telling Robert, Mark Hamill, he nailed the Joker. I mean, he didn't have much previous Jokers to work with at the time. He only had Jack Nicholson's, and was it what was his name? Cesar Romero?
Yeah,
Cesar Romero. That's it.
Cesar, that was the only two live action Jokers that were at the time. So he kind of built his own.
Mark Hamill.
Yeah, as a kid, I didn't know either. I mean, I didn't think I know until I was a teenager that it was Mark Hamill. How long did it take you, Cody?
Oh, a teenager. I remember I got like one of the like a collection of episodes on DVD, and they had like the special features, and so they showed the voice cast, and I was like, wait a minute, that's Luke Skywalker. What's the character on the show? The Joker.
So you didn't find out until the 2000s, is what you're saying?
Pretty much
from a 1991 film or 93 film.
He's supposed to be Luke Skywalker. He's not supposed to be doing evil stuff like that.
He played like the greatest Star Wars hero, and now he is the most intimidating and depraved villain Batman had.
That's called versatility, my friend. He's a good actor.
The older he gets, the more we miss out on the opportunity for him to be a villain in some kind of series.
Yeah.
He was the villain in Flash for a little bit.
Oh, I forgot about that, wasn't he? He was that weird, what character did he play?
He's the Trickster, which is like a knockoff version of the Joker, honestly.
Yeah. We need him as a live action, like old Joker or something. But
Trickster,
go ahead, Cody.
Oh, you're fine. Trickster, I mean, when he's handled right, he's okay. Like most of the time, people hand him like a knockoff Joker. He was actually, they did do, in one of the later series, the Justice League series, they did do a thing that involved the Trickster. Mark Hamill voiced him.
Wow.
And they did well. I feel like they handled the character well. They made him very different from the Joker.
Well, one thing I want to say about this movie too, I didn't feel like it was a kid's movie. I didn't feel any kiddie like campiness in it at all. I mean, other than Bugs Bunny being in the Warner Brothers logo.
I mean, I agree with John. It was like the film is really grimly serious. Like from the opening sequence when Batman like busts up that heist, like the film gets going, and it is like,
yeah,
it's not playing no games. Like with that first, like it took me like a few years to realize that gangster died.
Well, it's funny.
Like,
sorry.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
Well, it's funny because this film was made basically at a time when kids' movies and watered down adult content were blended to make what the 90s called family entertainment. Like, you couldn't watch that car crash all the way down from the building onto the street, but you could see it drop a couple of stories into another building, gently crashing into the window, and the sound of the horn blaring, letting you know the driver is dead.
Yeah.
Family entertainment. So, John, to go back on what you said, it felt like it was a family movie, John. That's what it was a family movie.
No, I mean, there were instances like, didn't someone get grazed by a gunshot at some point in the movie?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And someone got squashed by a gravestone.
Yeah. Yep. There's that. It was implied anyway. Which, I mean, even in some of the kind of like not the crime dramas you see on television that don't have really high like adult ratings, it kind of felt like it would even push it past that point a little bit.
Yeah, the movie definitely did, because like that last sequence where the police are chasing him, Batman gets the snot kicked out of him. Yes, it's serious. There's one part where he touches his head and he looks at his fingers, and they're like the fingers are covered in blood, and like he's bleeding from his lip, and like Batman gets beaten up in this film.
He really does. I won't lie about that.
Well, they did it for the action figures.
Oh, and then also like during their fight in like that weird cityscape when he's fighting the Joker, like there's a sequence where he kicks the Joker in the jaw and knocks a tooth out.
Yes. Oh, I forgot about that.
On the nosebleed. And I remember that's like the first time I saw something like that happen as a kid. I was like, I didn't even know you could hit someone hard enough to knock them out. I was like, gee.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's my turn now, huh?
Go ahead.
to think if this is the all right. So the question about this hot topic is this the best Batman movie ever made? Now, I do feel like me being again, fresh off the boat compared to you two, I feel like it's premature of me to really give I would say an informed opinion, but based on the little I've seen the 90s films, all of them, unfortunately. I've seen the Nolan trilogy. I've seen Batman versus Superman, and I did see the new Robert Pattinson version of it. And yeah, based on all of that, I would say yes, it is. Even though I loved The Dark Knight, despite its flaws, I would say it is the best Batman film. I think what I liked the most about it was how Bruce Wayne was portrayed, because I feel like a flaw in a lot of modern Batman is that we don't seem to follow much of Bruce Wayne's story. And when we do, it doesn't seem like there's that much to follow, or it's just so predictable an outcome that you don't care about the problem that is inevitably going to lead to that outcome. Like, he's having some Batman or not to Batman crisis, or how, we don't care because it's such a lukewarm story compared to everything else going on. This film captured what he was going through and how he had to beat a villain expertly. And I think it capturing his soul is the film's biggest compliment. It was an involving story, and that kind of helped me forgive the animation style. I won't lie, I was not the biggest fan of the animation style. My wife made the comment to me that she felt they belonged on cereal boxes, and I won't lie, I'm used to a more immersive animation style, and this was very minimalist. And so I was a bit bored by it, but the story was so good, I began to forget that it was a minimalist style. So I've also not seen, I
might be bringing this up a little too early, but I think I told you, me and Cody were talking about where they came up with this animation style. It was you said it was inspired by like the original Superman from the animated Superman from the 40s, wasn't it? Or 30s?
Yeah. So they're like these little, like, you can watch them on YouTube. They're free. But there's like these little Superman's like serials they would play at the beginning of movies in like the 1930s and 40s. They were a big deal at the time because they were like one of the first things in full color. And the animation they used, that was one of the earliest uses of like rotoscoping. So like they would watch people like do the motions, and then they would kind of trace over the motion. So the animation is very, very smooth for like a 40s animated cartoon. But the styling of that is what they use. And you can actually see that in some of the early episodes, because they kind of go away from it as the series goes on, but they kind of use like a lot of those beats, like just animating a small part of a character and just making the rest like a matte painting. Like you'll notice that if the character looks unusually detailed, like a painting, because someone painted them into the background and then like edited like an eye or something to animate, like Batman's eyes closing or something like that onto the painting, because that's what they did with the Fleischer cartoons. It was a callback.
The cityscape style reminds you of those type of pictures you see in 1930s or 1940s motif like buildings and stuff.
Now that I'll agree with. Yeah.
So with the style and everything, they wanted to capture something that was timeless. Like it being in the 1930s, but you could also see it being in like kind of a weird version of the present day. Like it didn't have like a set time that it took place in. Like they never specifically dated a year, and they just wanted to capture like a timelessness to it. They felt that the Batman '89 movie did a good job of that, and they wanted to imitate that sense of timelessness.
Oh, that's cool. So they actually found something to do with the '89 Batman movie.
Yeah. They used the Danny Elfman film and the Danny Elfman score for the opening title for a long time, and then the timelessness. A couple other things actually. There's other references too. Like there's a scene in the show when Batman's in Arkham Asylum, and they're referring to like the inmates, and they refer to the Joker as Jack Napier, and that's a reference to his name in the '89 film.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, if we're done with this topic, I would say the overall vote is yes, this is the best film ever made. So there's our official podcast stance on that. And we'll go ahead and move on. Huh?
It is law.
It is law now.
It's objective truth.
Because three dork nobodies proclaimed it to be so.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to go ahead and move on to our next topic here, the characters of the animated series. And we're again going to start off with some cool facts about the series. Now, John or Cody, again, like you both have copies of our outline. So whoever wants to go ahead and take it away, take it away.
I mean, you want to do it, John?
I can, yeah. So let's talk about some of the voice actors. We already mentioned them already. You got Kevin Conroy voices Batman, and he does voice Batman a couple other times. To me, most notably, if you've played video games, he is in the Arkham series for, I think, 2 or 3 of the games he's voicing Batman. I know he's in the first Arkham City and Arkham Asylum for sure. I don't know if he's in Arkham Origins or not.
He's not.
He's not, yeah. And I don't know about Arkham Knight, is he?
Yeah, he is. Him and
Knight's
reprised the roles in Arkham Knight.
Okay, so 3 of them. And so Mark Hamill plays the Joker. We've already talked about that. We mentioned we didn't recognize him as a kid, but man, he has an iconic voice as the Joker.
Yeah.
You can't if you yeah. You can't recognize it's him unless you're told most cases. And man, how does he do that laugh?
It is so good. Like that's actually, I think that's how they ended up settling on him for the Joker. So funny story about the Joker voice acting real quick. They originally cast Tim Curry to voice the Joker for the series.
Really?
Yes.
That is awesome.
But funnily enough, they felt Tim Curry's Joker was too scary. He was too creepy.
Well, he was cast as Pennywise, for crying out loud. Like, what?
Yeah, it's true. I was like, you know what? That's fair. I see that. But they did good with Mark Hamill. I think like Mark Hamill, when he did it, like what sold them on it was he did the Joker laugh, and he did his iconic Joker laugh, and they were like, "This is the guy. This is it. We found him."
I could just see Tim Curry sing, "Elijah." You can tell I'm a 90s kid.
Yeah.
Also, to talk about a couple things that happens in the series, super popular character now was introduced in the animated series, Harley Quinn.
Which I have never agreed with the idea of there being a Mrs. Joker, but, whatever.
I mean, as you see in the series, they change her a little bit in season 3. She separates from the Joker, and pretty much in the comic books, she follows that same storyline, I believe, right, Cody?
Yeah, she does. She kind of strikes out on her own. Nowadays in the comics, the last I checked in, she's kind of more of like a Deadpool-esque anti-hero. Like, she's not really an outright villain much anymore. She's just mostly like an anti-hero. She's a complicated person.
I know that.
Sorry.
I know there were a couple stories where she works with Poison Ivy, but I don't think that works out for too long. She also, in a couple of the comic books, she becomes a villain called Yo-Yo. I don't know if that's only in the Flashpoint stories, but she does become a separate type of villain in whatever story she's called Yo-Yo in.
Yeah, that's only in the Flashpoint.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead, Rob.
Well, I was just going to say, look, let me give a brief explanation as to why I'm not for a Mrs. Joker. I mean, like, we live in an era, fine. The message is, women don't need men, fine, be independent. But I also feel like there are some men who don't need women. And the Joker is, I would say for sure one of those guys. Like, I feel like a woman, a love interest makes him too human. And he needs to be, like, he's the freaking Joker. He does not need to be human. So that's why I'm against it.
So I have a quick question. Did you watch the Batman animated series episode Mad Love?
I watched where they introduced you to Mr. Freeze, and I watched the one. No, I didn't watch it.
So when this is done, go watch that episode Mad Love, because essentially the series agrees with you.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Honestly, the whole point of the Harley and Joker relationship is that it's toxic. It's not good. Harley is not really treated as an equal partner. It's hinted at throughout the series, but Mad Love kind of seals that deal and lets you know, this is not some Bonnie and Clyde fairy tale criminal romance. This is beyond toxic. It's really bad. So actually one of the dark episodes of the animated show.
To the Joker, Harley Quinn is really his comic relief and his fall man too. Anytime he's about to get caught, he uses her to take the fall for it sometimes.
Okay.
Yes, that is also a consistent theme throughout the series is if he's about to get caught and he can sacrifice Harley to not get caught, he will sacrifice Harley to not get caught.
Gotcha. All right.
No hesitation.
Which is what happened in the one episode I did see that had her in it. It was the We Almost Got an episode where, sure enough, she was the last person to get arrested by Batman because while the Joker got away, she was the fall person. So yeah, you're right about that, Cody.
Yep.
Now, to continue on about a couple of the different characters, the show does cover two different Robins. It has Dick Grayson and Tim Drake in it. And I'll talk in my little part of my comments on it. We'll talk a little bit more about the difference between those two Robins in a little bit. But those were some of the ones that really stood out to me. Do you want to talk about any of them, Cody, or do you want to save it to your thoughts about any other
Robins
characters?
or just characters in general?
The characters.
I don't know, I really liked their
Some of
treatment
the
of a lot of the villains and stuff. What were you gonna say, John?
some of the actors that played some of the villains would help.
Some of the actors. I did want to point out, I see it wasn't mentioned, is Ron Perlman voiced Clayface for his appearances in the show.
Was he related to Lou Pearlman?
I don't know.
Okay. I'm just curious.
Ron
No.
Perlman has a very iconic voice.
Ron Perlman does have he has one of those voices that you recognize pretty quickly.
I know the
And
name, but I can't place the face.
And then they also got I don't know if I told you about this, John. You probably saw it because I think you rewatched the series, but they got Adam West, who was Batman in the '60s series, to voice a character called the Gray Ghost.
Oh,
Well-
that's Ron Perlman. Okay, yeah, no, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, to voice the Gray Ghost in the episode Beware the Gray Ghost.
I remember that one now. I forgot about that.
Well, he's not actually like a superhero. He plays like a washed up. It's kind of a funny satirized analog of him playing Batman in the '60s, where he plays like an actor who gets typecast as a character he played back in the day, the Gray Ghost.
Was it a TV show or was it like a radio show? That
It was a TV show. In the
TV
series,
show.
it was a TV show, and it was pretty much young Bruce Wayne's inspiration for being a hero. Like he all but states that a lot of the stuff that he implements as Batman, like the seeds of inspiration started when he would tune in and watch episodes of the Gray Ghost, essentially.
And from my Star Trek fans, Cody reminded me because there apparently were two people that voiced Scarecrow.
Yes.
The second person that voiced him was Jeffrey Combs.
Which is
For you
the
Star Trek
coolest
nerds
thing.
out there.
Jeffrey Combs, whose voice is so incredibly creepy as the Scarecrow.
Yes. I'm surprised they didn't want to reuse him in anything else to be Scarecrow.
I know. I was actually disappointed because when I saw when I saw Scarecrow was going to be a big deal in the Arkham games, I was like, are we going to get Jeffrey Combs again? And no, we did not get Jeffrey Combs for any of the times he showed up. And I was so disappointed.
I am going to say that he is so talented at voice acting because he played Brunt and Wayum in DS9, two polar opposite characters. And I did not know until I went back and began to watch DS9 recently that he was, in fact, Brunt, FCA, and then Wayum, the charming propaganda guy. Like, so left field, and yet he did them both so well. And I think
Yeah.
it was all in the voices.
He does
actually
really do that.
He had a third character on DS9. You remember the character that was trying to get Quark to do a holo program for him, and he was trying to pay him big money to have
Major Kira?
Major Kira in it.
No, he
That's
was
him.
that guy. Oh my god,
He was that guy as well.
Oh, cool. All right.
He also reprises a voice acting role in the animated series. Well, it's later on in like Justice League Unlimited, he voices a hero character named The Question, who is he's a superhero, but he's kind of like also a paranoid conspiracy theorist crackpot. And he does a really good job. He became like one of my favorite characters in that series very quickly. But he did very good with that as well. So
I would like to apologize for my horrible Wayum impersonation just a minute ago. That was a horrible display, but
I thought it was a beautiful expression of love for a character. There's nothing to be ashamed of.
thank you for that reassuring pat on my shoulder.
Going with the Jeffrey Combs theme of disparate personalities, John disagrees vehemently. For those of you that can't, his head shaking.
I mean, to be honest with you, Robert, you do. If you had if we could take you to a Comic-Con, I think you could pass as a Vorta.
I could probably be a Vorta too, quite frankly. And actually, I could be a pretty good Ferengi. But you know what? I would like for my wife to not sleep on the couch tonight, so I'm not going to say anything else about that right now.
You know,
Yeah.
wise policy.
Yeah. All right. So, John, I think it actually is time for your thoughts on the on this topic that I've forgotten about. Oh, the characters. All right, John,
Yep.
go.
I just really want to give a shout out to Mr. Freeze's backstory episode, Heart of Ice. I mean, man, was that just an amazing episode. I mean, really it pulls at your heartstrings a little bit, makes you like the guy, because every time he reappears, you're like, you don't want him to lose. Well, you don't want necessarily to beat Batman, but you feel bad that he's in the situation he's in. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. Now that actually covers my comment, so I'm going to save what I have to say to you about that until later, because I got a whole thing on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like that episode actually won an award, I believe, for best animated television for the year it came out. Heart of Ice was a crowning achievement. They completely reworked Freeze's backstory. He was not that interesting a character in the comic books. He was a weirdo scientist with a freeze ray gun in the comics. And they took that character and made him like a legend, essentially. And he actually has a really interesting, consistent story arc throughout the series.
Well, it kind of when I was rewatching the third season, which is also called the New Animated Adventures of Batman, he went kind of weird. Like he got to a point that he was only a head in a robot body at one point, and his emotional part was kind of cut off at that point. He didn't care anymore because I think Nora had been restored, but she moved on and married someone else.
Yeah, that was actually covered in like the next Batman movie, Batman Sub-Zero.
Oh,
that's actually like what that story covers is Nora eventually being cured and everything to do with Freeze, and why he's kind of in a really bitter place.
Yeah. And then I have other characters I really love, like the Mad Hatter has a really kind of dark story in his show up in the actual series. Robert, did you watch the one episode with Penance for the Dream?
Dude, I tried several times to sit down and life kept getting in the way. I swear to God, as soon as I have time, I do want to finish that episode. It looked good, but I am an adult, and unfortunately, being an adult has been getting in the way a lot of watching cartoons. So,
Yeah.
so I'm currently screwed.
Relatable, very relatable.
Yeah.
It felt like it was Inception before Inception happened in that episode.
Really?
Okay. It's in a dream. Bruce doesn't know what's going on. Go ahead, Cody.
Slight spoilers.
Yeah, slight spoilers. I won't tell everybody, but
Yeah.
The Mad Hatter has him in a dream, and Bruce doesn't realize it till the end. But it's a pretty wild episode for those who haven't seen it. Go watch it.
Interesting. Okay.
His backstory episode is pretty sad too, because he obsesses over his Alice, and it ended badly for him in that episode. What else did I have written down here? Dick Grayson, backstory episode, that was pretty sad too. Wasn't that the first season, Cody?
I think so. May have been the second season.
Okay.
Maybe in the second season opener, maybe. It was one of the first two-parters the series ever did. I know that. The first half was so beautifully animated. I loved the first half. The second half, animation wasn't as great, but the story was still good.
Yeah. You're talking about the new animated series, right?
No. Are you talking about Dick Grayson Robin or Tim Drake Robin?
Dick Grayson.
Yeah. So that was before the new animation. That was the old animation.
Okay. Gotcha. Yeah. And we've already talked about Harley Quinn, and you talked about the episode I was going to mention. She does have a good backstory, and her story is kind of sad in that sense. But one thing I appreciate about this series, Commissioner Gordon and Alfred, they had better roles in this series. They were just really old men in the 60s variation or the 90s movies.
Oh God.
Yeah, they were practically useless in the 60s and the 90s movies.
They were there just to be there is what they were.
We even get an episode of Alfred being shown that he has that hidden background of being a secret agent. Don't we, Cody? Yeah.
Yeah, there's an episode that covers the fact that he used to be an agent for MI6. Yeah.
So that was really good because in the 90s Batman movie, they had that one guy that reoccurred as Alfred, and the man was just you didn't feel like he could do anything. You didn't feel like he was MI6 agent at any point. He's boring. I don't think he ever said anything important in those movies that I remember.
Yeah.
And especially Commissioner Gordon was, I don't even remember who played him in the 90s movies. Do you?
Dude, I don't know. No, I do not.
No. But anyway.
It's worth noting that in the comics, Alfred is a lot more useful. And it's also funny because, Batman has the whole thing about guns. But in the comics, like when people break into Wayne Manor, Alfred has no problem with guns. And he consistently throughout most of the comics, he keeps like a double barrel shotgun in the house. And whenever there's like a sequence where someone breaks in, like Alfred breaks out that double barrel shotgun and he's not afraid to lay some people out. Which is always just a funny visual.
If I'm getting Google's response correctly, his name is Ralph Fiennes. Fiennes. That's what it says here. I've never heard of the guy.
That's the name of the guy that plays Alfred in the 90s movies?
That's if I read that answer correctly in Google, it is.
Or
yeah.
Commissioner Gordon. Sorry.
Huh?
Was that Commissioner Gordon or Alfred?
No, I typed in Alfred.
That's Alfred. It was.
Okay. I mean, I don't doubt it. Never heard of him either.
But I really liked Gordon and Alfred, but another character that I also liked was the Joker. I mean, really, it is the best Joker that I've ever seen. Mark Hamill, if he would just do a live action one, we would have it, man. I mean, you can't beat his voice acting for this role.
I'm so glad I brought my sword today. I'm not sure I agree that Mark Hamill was the best Joker ever. I mean, of course, I'm going to be a hipster and say Heath Ledger, but I don't know how Cody feels about this.
Honestly, like I really appreciate Heath Ledger's performance. He did a great job. He's a fantastic actor. And he did good for the role that he was put in that film. But when it comes to like all the facets of the Joker, like I feel like Mark Hamill edges him out just a little bit. Only for the sake of the fact that the Joker, like, he has so many different like moves and facets. Like sometimes he's just like a goofy comedian. Like he throws an floating whoopee cushion at you. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, he can be single-handedly the most sinister thing in a room, period, bar none. And I feel like Heath Ledger did a great job at being the most sinister thing in a room, bar none. But as far as being the goofier aspect of the character, the jokester aspect of the character, he did good. But I think Mark Hamill does it a bit better, and he's able to transition between the two a lot smoother. Like,
what?
Oh, just like because there's just some sequences like in the show where like in the first half, like I remember the Joker making me laugh a little bit, and then like I don't know, he just flips a light switch. You can just almost feel him leaning into the microphone when he's recording the voice, and it gets like really sinister and really uncomfortable.
Yeah,
and he hasn't even like threatened horrible violence on the person. He's just a tone of voice that just says, "I'm going to do terrible things to you that you can't."
Yeah. I will agree with you on that one, Cody. Like Heath Ledger was all about dark and gritty, whereas I will admit that even I detected that almost bipolar turn in the Joker from happy-go-lucky fool to you are dead. You are already dead. You just don't know it yet, And
you see that in him in the Mask of Phantasm.
Yeah.
He is funny, but then he's just terrifying in one scene.
With the old man, which I won't lie, him finding that old man dead was something that I did think was a bit much for a child's film, because that was a horrifying piece of animation with that old man with that dead frozen Joker smile on his face. But not to get too far off topic here.
Yep. But well, at least you didn't say Jared Leto. I mean, we would have disowned you. I mean,
I
we
would have disowned
ended the
myself if I had said Jared Leto, Jay Leno.
Jared Leto.
We do not speak of anything produced by Snyder.
And we will not cover those movies.
No, we will not.
They're apocryphal heresy.
Yeah.
2 big words. So you know he's mad now.
Well, if you want to pause the show to open up your dictionary, you can do it now.
Well, I know what he said. I'm just saying.
I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about for the listeners.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We do attract the lower brow end of the spectrum.
Just insult our fan base and just ensure that we'll never go anywhere. Good job,
All
John.
6 of them.
Yeah,
All
right.
6 of them. I
5
know
of
at least
whom we
it's
know.
fine. They can take it.
Yeah.
And that weird guy that keeps looking up better move to Russia and keeps opening up our video. I don't know why you're doing that.
So
we have
weird.
never talked about that other than right now. And we do
Never.
not care. We're about nerd stuff.
I'm curious why the YouTube algorithm says move to Russia, Rockafire podcast. Like, where the heck does the algorithm get that from? And people wonder why it's hard to get famous on YouTube, because people want to move to Russia and instead get Rockafire podcasts.
That is strange. Who knows what the Eldritch algorithms that the YouTube Google houses are churning in people's search engines nowadays.
From
Well, it'll
big
definitely
words
be
to
in
loss
this one
of
when we
words.
release it.
To what? Big words
Yep.
to what?
To a loss of words. He's getting angrier and angrier. He can't even think of big words to use now.
It's just because you got me thinking about the Snyder stuff.
Sorry.
Well, to do a palate cleanser, let's talk about a couple of the other villains really quick.
Yeah.
Because there's some really good backstories. Cody, best villain of the series, Condiment King.
Oh, not even mad. It's.
I thought
was
that was like a Ronald McDonald character.
Did I send you a picture of it, Robert?
First of all, my name is Robert. It's not Robert, okay?
You're Robert now. My English is coming out.
I'm not a Nick Jr. character. And no, you did not.
Or a Tauntaun sound effect. Rabbit.
Mm-hmm.
Look it up, Robert, while we're talking about it. I mean,
All right.
when I looked it up, I found out they were just wanting to do a play on making fun of the 60s Batman campiness when they made this character, apparently.
And what's his name again, John?
Condiment King. You know, like condiments as in ketchup or mustard.
It sounds like a really bad, what's the word? Mascot for a crappy ketchup company.
It looks like that. Trust me.
Yeah.
Oh, sweet flying frick.
Yeah. Make sure you look at the right one. They have an updated, grittier one. I don't know why they would
I'm
make
looking at. He's not an updated gritty. He is a paintballer on cocaine. Is who he is now.
No, look at the other one. The other one is a guy with looks like he has a pickle hat on, and then he is wearing like
a hot dog or something.
Yeah.
No. He's wearing like that underwear you wear in like cold areas. It's like one piece. But then he has like white old man underwear pulled up over it, and he has
yeah. You know, the craziest part that is not even like the craziest, most ridiculous villain Batman has in his arsenal. Like they were holding back. I don't know. There's also Kite Man.
I forgot about him.
Yeah.
Oh God.
And then also there's like a villain who like he was blinded, but for some reason he partook in a military experiment and like he had like eyes put on all 10 of his fingertips. Sorry, I remember the bad guy's name, but I just remember thinking that's a really lame villain.
Yeah, Kite Man just looks like Green Lantern.
Except with no power ring.
And he's
Well,
white.
he had like a kite on his head or something, didn't he?
He has a kite for a body. He looks like that dinosaur from Jurassic Park who ate Nedry.
Yeah.
Dilophosaurus.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. He looks like a constantly provoked Dilophosaurus swooping down to rob banks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, for all nerds who are like dinosaur freaks, yes, I know it doesn't look like that in reality, but it did in the movie. So flake off.
Look, we all know that most of the dinosaurs didn't look how they looked in Jurassic Park. But that's okay, because the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park looked cool, and stop trying to take our childhood from us, you monsters.
Exactly. All right,
So
anyway.
dinosaurs look like different variations of chicken, and I'm sure they taste just like chicken.
Let me see. I will have the New York strip dinosaur. Okay, I got a good joke for that one. Continue. Sorry.
Monster's burger.
Well, so let's talk about a villain that looks kind of silly, but he's also kind of an intense villain, the Ventriloquist. You remember him, Cody?
Yeah, the Ventriloquist.
Yep.
If you have
I'm
a fear
looking these
like
all up as you
mannequins
say
and
this.
dolls, it's over. It's
Yeah,
not
look up
fun.
the Ventriloquist. He looks silly, but he is terrifying to an extent.
I like this new age, this newer picture of him, but the Batman animated series, his puppet in this newer age picture is actually scarier because he has like white Joker paint on him too.
I'm not sure what that's from.
More sinister eyes. Like that's a creepy doll. And out of the comic books, okay, in the comic books he's terrifying, but in the
Cartoon,
Batman,
he's supposed to look like Scarface.
Well, you know, I kind of see that, but whatever.
Yeah, and the actual like dummy is called Scarface.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
And, yeah,
The puppet's called Scarface.
Wow.
and it's implied that they are. You can't really tell in the episodes. It's implied over and over that it's in the ventriloquist's head. He's making the voices, but there's also a couple episodes where they play with it and say that Scarface is really its own thing, and he needs the ventriloquist just to talk for some reason.
I'm gonna do a throwback here, John. That's exactly what the dynamic to Rolf and Earl from the Rock of Fire.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Scarface is interesting. He's also interesting because he's one of the few in the anime series. He's one of the few Batman bad guys to actually eventually get a happy ending.
Yep, he does
Really?
in season 3. Yep.
Wait,
Yeah,
the
he's-
puppet gets a happy ending?
No, the puppet
man.
gets killed.
Oh,
Man gets a happy ending.
Yeah,
The puppet gets put through a wood chipper, and you
Oh.
hear him scream in like the guy's voice in the guy's head, which is when you
that's
put
actually
together
cool.
there's a puppet go through a wood chipper. That's pretty horrifying.
Well, see, I like that psych stuff like that, and so that's awesome. Like, I want to see that now.
well, it's a good episode, but there is some campy moments in it because the ventriloquist, whose real name is Arthur, he's played a couple times, and Arthur is trying to recover from his mental issue that caused him to create Scarface, and so Scarface's old goons, who are real people, try to convince him that Scarface is real and needs him, and so they hire a midget to pretend to be Scarface.
Wow.
They do. It does make for a creepy visual, like during the sequence, though, because like there's just this puppet standing around and running around on its own. So so that in itself is creepy because he just kind of jumps up and starts running around, and you're just like, hold up, wait a minute.
Well, let me finish up my thoughts on this. One last character I want to mention is Baby Doll. I believe she was created for this series.
She was? I think she was, yeah.
Yeah, she was created from what I can tell. Baby Doll has a very, very sad backstory. She's a child actress, hits it big in a show, but she ends up getting outshined by a younger male actor who ends up pulling like a Scrappy-Doo type thing and makes her look bad. But she also has physical problems that prevent her from growing. So she's forever a child.
Did any of you guys watch Cats Don't Dance whenever you were kids?
I think I watched it like once.
I feel like they inspired her. The antagonist of that film was a character named Darla Dimple, who obviously she was a parody of Shirley Temple. Yeah. And they look identical. Even the deranged look in her eyes looks identical.
Well, also one thing to look up, because it's a Warner Brothers animation, Baby Doll is actually If you compare her side, if you ever watch the show Tiny Toons Adventures,
I've heard of it.
It was also a Warner Brothers production. They have an annoying character in there called Elmira. If you put them beside each other, they do look the same. Like they must have used her design to inspire Baby Doll.
I'm going to share my screen. All right, here is Baby Doll. Do you see her?
Yeah.
Okay, now watch this. There's Darla Dimple.
Yeah, they look very similar. Like when
Very
you just said
similar.
when you said the name, I was like, oh yeah, she does look like Darla Dimple.
That is, yeah. I swear she's where they got their idea from.
Oh, I forgot about this movie. I have seen this.
Yeah, like I said, I think I've seen it once and only once. But
This
I
was
remember
my childhood.
Cats Don't Dance is your childhood.
No, many things are my childhood, okay? And Cats Don't Dance is one of them.
Oh, okay.
It had Gene Kelly's choreography, and I love old school stuff, so, get off my back.
Baby Doll has a very sad story because she is like an adult at this point, and she can't live an adult life because she looks like a child. People don't take her seriously. And so, you know how the story goes. And it's a very, very sad ending. I mean, Batman doesn't ever really beat her up at the end of it. It's just her realizing at the end that she is an adult trapped in a child's body.
Yeah, there's like the sequence is like the Hall of Mirrors sequence.
Yeah.
And like there's one mirror that like kind of distorts her image to make her look like an adult and like kind of like makes her have essentially like a nervous breakdown. Very sad though, because it's not like a crazy person nervous breakdown. It's like a real nervous breakdown. It's like when a person's life is just collapsing around them and you can see it and you can just feel it in their voice that like all their aspirations and all the things they hope to do just died. They died and there's no bringing it back. And that's kind of the end of the episode. It's like really like the episode ends with like her just crying on Batman's like hip and just crying and like Batman just putting his hand on her head to like comfort her. And that's kind of how the episode ends. And it's just like, oh God.
I'm not going to say what I just did in the camera, but
yeah, Batman knocks her out like a takedown in Arkham Asylum.
That was not knocking out, John. That was not knocking out.
Lethal.
Now
he broke her neck. To avoid anyone thinking that it's something nasty, he broke her neck. Nothing else was implied with that joke.
Now, she does have a little bit of a redemption episode. Well, not really redemption. She returns for another episode and she teams up with, of all people, Killer Croc.
She does. She does.
Yes.
It was kind of a strange episode, honestly.
That was in season 3, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was in the new animation style.
Yeah, it wasn't that great of an episode, but her first one was like awesome. But it's really hard to follow up to that. So that's all the thoughts I had on the characters. Now to you, Cody.
Happy New Year, by the way, guys. No, I'm kidding.
Happy New Year.
Okay.
I don't get it.
It took Cody a minute to get it. Like that was such a long segment.
Well, to be fair, like there is a lot to say about like the characters in this show. I really liked all of them. The thing I appreciate about them is the characters are consistent for the most part. Everybody kind of has, and everybody's kind of put on a progression path. Like again, like the episode that I recommend, Almost Got Him. Like Batman's barely in the episode. The villains are all sitting around a table having a conversation, and you could know nothing about like these people, and inside of like 5 minutes, inside of their natural conversation, you have a pretty good idea of who everybody is and what their motivation is, and like their interpersonal histories. Like the sequence where Poison Ivy walks up and Two-Face says Ivy, and she's like, "Hey, Harvey," and he's like, "Half of me wants to strangle you. What does the other half want? To hit you with a truck." Kind of looks
that was funny.
Used to date. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So just like things like that. Like the villains. That's the other thing. The villains were treated like people in both a good and a bad way. In the sense that supervillainy was like an aspect of their life, but they were also people that did things and had a life outside of that, and they had personality quirks. Like the Penguin is a big time drama queen. and you know, and everybody kind of quietly is afraid of the Joker because they know that he is single-handedly the craziest person in the room. Anytime he shows up, like, no one really challenges the Joker because no one's willing to say it out loud. Everyone's quietly afraid of him.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the storytelling, again, like, it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, is like really tight. Like, they do a really good job of only having 22 minutes per episode and telling a really well-plotted, well-paced story for the most part. There are some duds, but you make 85 episodes of television, you're going to get some duds. But for the most part, a majority rule is like they do a really good job with their story structure and their characters. As far as talking about characters, one of my favorite episodes was kind of a sequel to a decent two-parter, which was like the Hardak, which is like a Batman the Animated Series take on the Terminator. It's like a evil AI that creates robots and starts trying to replace people in Gotham City with these duplicates. The episodes themselves are pretty good, and there's some pretty like creepy like body horror moments where like these normal looking people, or like the mayor, all of a sudden like squats on all four legs and starts crawling across the room like a spider, and like Batman hides from him, and he kind of looks down, like he's hiding on like the roof, I think. And like the guy crawls in like a spider, and then his head does like a full weird 360 tilt to look for him, and like looks up at him on the roof, like from his back. And there's like this creepy moment. But the biggest highlight of that Hardak series is it produced a sequel episode called His Silicon Soul, which is so good because it like covers a lot of really deep topics in 22 minutes. It's essentially, I have you watch it. You kind of figure out what's going on immediately, so it's not like a spoiler. But essentially, Hardak created a duplicate of Batman, but like something's wrong with it, and it really thinks it's Batman. And you kind of follow this robot story as it sadly discovers that it's not, and nor was it ever human. And so, like, themes of humanity, what makes us human? Like, what does it mean to be a person? What does it mean to have a soul? Like really deep existential questions handled in 22 minutes.
I know.
That was like really good.
Took RoboCop over 2 hours.
I know. Yeah. iRobot.
Oh,
2 hours to cover the subject.
I have never seen a movie where I hated every single character until I saw iRobot. But anyway.
That's fair.
Yeah. Cody, any other thoughts?
I mean, that's really about it. Like, I really love this series, in case no one could tell, in case I was being a little too subtle about it, you know. So, you know, the only thing, like, if I'm being fair and objective, the only thing I'll say is, like, sometimes the animation wasn't up to snuff. But they kind of got, like, different. They didn't have one devoted animation house to develop each episode. They kind of, like, essentially shopped it out to different animation shops. And so that's why sometimes you got like a real dip in animation quality, because some of those shops just did not put forth their honest effort.
It felt like they were doing a bunch of shows all at once too, because like I mentioned already, you see similarities in the Tiny Toon Adventures. You also see similarities in Animaniacs, all Warner Brothers produced shows. I see more the new animated adventures or season 3 of the series. There's a little bit of similarities to the Animaniac style in there to me, especially the humans. When you look at the regular humans in Animaniacs or Pinky and the Brain.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess it's my turn now, huh?
Yep.
All right. Cool. All right. Here's my overall. You know, again, I almost don't feel like I have the right to review a series I've only seen 3 episodes of. But again, you know, I'm on this podcast too, so I got to give my 2 cents. The only 2 cents I really feel that I have a right to give is I thought about how, you know, ultimately I feel like a flaw in the Batman that I also saw in this show was that, and I do mean, you know, Batman overall too, was that Batman almost has better the villains than it actually does a hero. Like sometimes I'll be so involved with the story of the villain that Bruce Wayne's story or even Batman's story kind of takes a back seat. And a good example of that would be the Mr. Freeze episode that I did watch. Like, while, yeah, you do, or at least you're supposed to want to see Batman beat him, 22 minutes was enough for me to get involved thoroughly with his grief and his anger. And I truly understood his need for revenge and felt that conflict inside of myself over whether I wanted his dastardly plan to succeed or not. Like, whereas Batman was just there to fight him. He was there to fight this villain I'm having mixed emotions about because you seem to spend more time getting to know the villains than you do Batman. He almost becomes an anti-hero because there's that part of you that roots for the villain, either because they're pitiable or they're just that good at being bad. But either way, my critique for this show, or my thoughts on this show, were that it was a good show, but I feel like it does kind of take more time telling you who the villains are than really letting you get emotionally attached to Batman. But I also have to base that review on 3 episodes. So
No, that's fair. There's a few episodes that really cover Batman as a character, or have Batman-centric character arcs. There's one really good one where he visits Crime Alley. There's a few of them that kind of focus on Batman. I think what they do well is they, like I said in my thing, is they do good at humanizing the villains and making them people.
yeah,
And so you naturally sympathize, especially when these people are like so hardly screwed over by life or by the corrupt or by someone else evil. It's hard not to like be like, well, maybe they should get away with it. Maybe they should get away with it. But
yeah.
at the end of the day, like they are like hurting people and a lot of times they're hurting people that really have nothing to do with who hurt them. And I think the show also does a good job of showing that. We just kind of glaze over because like villain doing villain things are just like, okay, yeah, he's doing his villain shtick.
Yeah.
But you really look at it, like they are like the way they handle things or the way they want to take their revenge is so like roundabout, human life cost ineffective, that again, like you also understand the need for Batman to just be like, I can't let you do that. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, like I said, once again, that is a review based on 3 episodes. And so again, if this episode does become successful, I am sure comment sections will be flooded with angry nerds who would love to tell me off for giving that kind of a feedback. And you know what? I understand and I deserve it. I will make it a point to watch more of the series. And I'm sure afterwards that my viewpoint will change, because I went in, once again, skeptic about the movie and walked away in awe. So I'm sure after a while that I will recant my statement. But if that covers that, we can move on to our next topic here, which is how the show compares to the comics. And John, I see that you have this set up as a Q&A between you and Cody.
Cody, you're familiar with the comics. How does it compare to the comics?
So Batman is like a really old character. He like dates back. He's almost as old as Superman. So he's gone through a lot of changes over the decades. The series, I think, does a good job of taking like the fundamentals of the various eras of Batman from the comics and like consolidating them down into a single vision or a single visage that anybody that's like a Batman fan can get into. I mean, even if you're a fan of kind of the sillier, like campier era of Batman, like the 60s Batman and those comics and Silver Age comics, there is an element of that in there. And the colorful villains like Condiment King and things like that. The series isn't afraid to embrace that. And so I think it does a really good job of taking stuff from the comics and boiling it down to its essentials, to present to you like the fundamentals of a character. Honestly, I feel like it's a good place if you're interested in Batman and you're not sure to start with comics. I would actually recommend this TV show. Of course, ironically, it would go on to influence the comics themselves, because a lot of its elements eventually got carried over. even the look of Batman's outfit for a time.
There were some changes made to it. I know some things were made to appropriate it for kids or to just simplify it, but did anything really stand out to you?
So some of the changes made for kids, the one thing that stands out to me for that is actually, we mentioned in the Phantasm how the Joker like kills that mobster. So in the TV show, the studio said very specifically, the Joker was not allowed to kill anybody on screen. You cannot have the Joker running around killing people. And so the producer or the directors and the writers just like, okay, well, we still want the Joker to be scary and we still want him to prove a mortal threat. So how do we get that across that he's a murderous psychopath without the murder? And what they came up with was the patented Joker gas. In the comics, like it would make you get like early in the comics, it would make you get this like fresh grin, like in the Phantasm, and then you just die. But for the show, they changed it to where essentially like you were aware that it's like someone's tickling you, but you can't stop them. And you just slowly being tickled to death and you're trapped inside your own mind, aware, and you can't catch your breath. And like you would die eventually because you'd asphyxiate, but it was dragged out a lot longer. So everybody who was hit with Joker gas conveniently died off screen or was able to be treated at a hospital so they didn't die. When you think about it, that's almost a worse death than the Joker just rolling up and like shooting somebody. It's like a worse fate. But it was something that they were like, well, it's more for kids until you stop and think about it.
I still like how they couldn't kill in the show, but you can kill in the movie, which is still a spin-off of the show. Hollywood, and it's unquestionable logic.
Well,
yes, exactly. No,
some of the characters' backstories were altered too, and I talked to you about how the second Robin, well, actually he's the third Robin in the comic books, but Tim Drake, his story was vastly altered compared to his original story.
Yeah, so he was vastly altered. I tried to look up before the podcast because I never really thought about it before, but I tried to look up to see why they used Tim Drake as opposed to the second Robin in the comics, Jason Todd. Mm-hmm. The only thing that I really came up with is just because the name Jason Todd is so synonymous with like him dying, that Robin dying in the comic books. Mm-hmm. When you present Jason Todd, when you present Jason Todd, you are instantly like kind of setting up to die. And they didn't even want the villains to kill people on the show if they could help it. So there was no way that they were going to be able to kill a child on Batman, the animated series. So I think they took Tim Drake because everyone knows that Tim Drake doesn't die. And they just incorporated a lot of Jason Todd backstory into him for the TV show, just to kind of at least reference Jason Todd.
I thought it was because, maybe Jason Todd was synonymous with being the least liked Robin in the entire series.
It's true.
People voted to have him killed in the comics.
Yeah, they did. They put it up to the vote, and people called in to have him killed. I mean, that's possible. Tim Drake, I feel like Tim Drake is very likable. He's one of the few Robins who actually want to be Robin. Like the other Robins wanted to be, but they were situational. Like Dick Grayson became an orphan adopted by Bruce Wayne. So, you kind of feel like that's only going to go one way. And the same is kind of true with Jason Todd. He was like a street urchin that Batman took in. So Tim Drake was the only one in the comics. Tim Drake became Robin partially because Tim Drake was such a detective that he was able to figure out that Bruce Wayne was Batman by himself with no help. So he was kind of already primed and set up to be Robin.
Yeah, so and he also becomes the Red Robin in the comics.
The red, mm-hmm. As in Yum.
Yeah, that one.
Oh.
He was
the
known
Red
for
Robin
his burger.
name. I never liked the Red Robin name. I thought it was dumb because of that reason. Every time I heard it, I heard the choir Yum.
Now, Cody, what did you think of Ra's al Ghul in this series? Was he different, or was he actually closer to the comic books?
Honestly, this version of Ra's al Ghul is probably the most comics accurate we've ever gotten. Part of the reason why, interestingly, is because the guy that came up with Ra's al Ghul, Denny O'Neil, was actually brought on to write like the episodes that introduced him, the two-parter. So the guy that actually came up with the character wrote him for the animated series, which is probably helps making it more authentic to the comics.
Yeah.
A little bit.
So he was a big difference compared to Liam Neeson's variation of him.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
Huge difference. Liam Neeson's character is kind of more of the leader of a weird extremist ninja cult. And Ra's al Ghul in the comics and in the show, it's kind of more of a grand scale eco-terrorist with sprinklings of a ninja cult on top.
Yeah, I was going to ask a really greenhorn question, but I guess I already got answered. So his name's not Ra's al Ghul, guys?
It's debated. I feel honestly, I have the feeling of tomato about it. You can say Roz, you can say Raish. It all just depends on how you feel about it.
No, I get you.
I think in the Nolan movies, was he Ra's al Ghul?
It was Roz in the Nolan movies, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Raish, it's Roz.
Well, those are most of the questions I've had because we did already discuss the other ones we had listed here earlier. So let's move on to the next subject.
Gotcha. So our final subject for the evening was the cartoon age appropriate? Now, I picked up this as a hot topic because I did look at some comment sections for I subscribe to a lot of nostalgia pages on Facebook, and every time they do like a meme from the Batman series, there's always someone saying how, that just doesn't fly. And so I feel like this is definitely a hot topic, whether or not the kids are or whether or not this was a kid appropriate show. And I guess, it says here that I go first for this one. So I feel like, first of all, it's hard to really gauge what's child appropriate and what's not, seeing as how the sensibilities of people change so, rapidly from one person to the next. One thing that I did, want to say is that we often judge the family friendliness of a film or a series these days by saying you couldn't do this now. But I'm like, is that really a fair way to judge anything? Because, just because we wouldn't do something now doesn't mean it was bad to do it then, or if we did it now, it just means that the public opinion has changed. And I don't know, family entertainment meant that there was something in there for everyone to enjoy. Like when you watch any old school 2000s family movie, as I said before, there is watered down adult content in it. Stuff that is meant for adults to laugh at or be entertained by, but something not so offensive that a kid just plain shouldn't be there by any standard of common sense. Now, in terms of the Mask of Phantasm, I feel like it was pushing an almost PG-13 rating with some of the horror elements in it. But as far as the series goes, I frankly would say yes, it is still child appropriate. I just think people have gotten a bit too sensitive in some aspects. As far as the Mask of Phantasm, I would say, make sure that your kid can take it, because there are some elements that I know would scare a child. So as far as the movie itself goes, I would say yes and no to it. And that's really all I have to say about that.
Mm-hmm. I grew up with the show and I didn't realize how much stuff they were skirting around when they made the series. But, I almost feel like, and I don't know how Cody will feel about this, but I feel like instead of seeing the TV PG rating in the corner, I felt like back then they were trying to push it as TVG, didn't you?
Yeah, TVG, maybe around the time. I know with the later stuff in the DC animated universe, they came up with almost a new label, that TVY7.
Yeah, excuse me, TBY. Yeah. So
TVY7. Yeah. So I feel like the early Batman was treated that way. They did try to push it as kind of more family friendly, or more kid friendly. I guess I should adjust my terms.
We already mentioned, characters got grazed by gunshots. There were bruises, and there were even, I know some of them, when they got punched, we might have a little drip of blood on their chin or something like that. in the different episodes. Let's talk about how with what they got away with. Not really what they got away with, but the fact that this show was able to do this stuff with a TVY or TVG or PG rating. Why can't they do a Batman with less violence like this? Because I mean, these shows were popular. I enjoyed it. If they could do new Batman series like this, I would love it.
I feel like part of the reason they don't do that is because they know that grittiness and graphic violence sells. I mean, like, the masses seem to love it when Batman rolls in and starts breaking people's arms. Like, not to go on too big of a tangent, but like, I remember consistently when Batman v Superman first came out, the one thing that everybody seemed to agree on was like the fight scene with Batman in the warehouse was so awesome. And if you go back and watch that fight scene, like, some of those people may not be dead. Some of them definitely are dead, but some of those people may not be dead, but they're like maimed for life. He's breaking arms at the elbow. Like, I remember he slams one guy like against a wall so hard that there's a blood spatter on the back of the wall. And this is what people like all agreed was like the best part of this film. It's like the reason that it's not that they can't make a Batman that's about the violence level of the animated series. They can. It's just that I feel like modern culture now is just like, make it bloodier, make it more graphic, make it more intense. That's what we want to see. Blood for the masses. As grim as that sounds.
Yeah. Well, that's about the size of it, actually. Like, I remember whenever I was younger, you went to a theater and you saw plenty of PG, plenty of PG-13, and like 1 or 2 R-rated things. And now it is just the opposite. Almost everything is R-rated. You see a PG-13 here and a PG there. Actually, I never see PG anymore. I see G, 13, or R. Like, it's changed. Like, people have gotten more of a need for the grotesque. And I feel like a psych thriller like Batman does have the potential to be, does not need grotesque violence. Some action, fine, but the nastiness, I feel, is over the top.
Yeah, I agree on that. Like, I feel like Batman works best when he's mainly a detective. There's some action, and there's also just a sprinkle of horror elements in it. It's not like grotesque, but there's a sprinkle of like really scary horror related elements in it. Like, the villain should be scarier. There should be a sequence that's scary or creepy. But like, as far as like body, like true, like bloody, gory body horror, brutal, bone-breaking violence, you can tell a Batman story without that. You don't need it.
Yeah.
It's super.
So, Cody, what are your thoughts on the movie and the show as far as being appropriate for kids, other than what you've already talked about?
Yeah, honestly, I feel like are there elements that I wouldn't show like a young kid? Like, I have a son that's 2.5. And there are some episodes of Batman the Animated Series that I feel comfortable with him watching, and there are some episodes that I don't, because he's 2.5. But that's a 2-year-old. Ironically, the very first episode that was ever premiered on Leather Wings, not only does it have like Batman getting beat up and like the blood in the corner of the lip thing, but also like the transformation, because the main villain is like a Man-Bat, which is like this mutant. And there's like a transformation sequence, and the transformation sequence is actually pretty intense. The animation gets all like really weird and like nightmare cinema-ish, and he transforms into the monster. I wouldn't let my 2-year-old watch that, mostly because I want my 2-year-old to sleep without nightmares at night. But I would say, as far as overall content, I feel like it's fine. Honestly, I feel like kids' content nowadays is kind of toothless anyways. I feel like kids' content should have a little edge to it, not a ton, but there should be an element of danger where the kid feels like, that's part of what made the show exciting for us, is we felt the thrill of like Batman going up against a bad guy that seemed really dangerous. Like, he seemed like this guy could do something bad. Batman was the only thing that could stop him.
Can I add something to what you're saying here, Cody?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. So you mentioned how we want kids stuff to have an edge because we do want kids to be emotionally involved, right? Well,
Yeah.
I read this little story. Someone in their adult life met Jonathan Hyde, who played the hunter on Jumanji in the 90's. And he said to Mr. Hyde, "Man, your character gave me nightmares as a child." And Jonathan Hyde walked over to him, got that close to his face, and just said, "Good," and walked away. So I second the motion that kids' entertainment does have to have a level of edge. Why? Because that makes for a good story, and it makes for good memories, and it makes for interactions with Jonathan Hyde possible. You know?
Yes, I agree. And I mean, even when you go back and look at like fairy tales and stuff, like the original version of those fairy tales that were told to children were really like, if you think Batman the Animated Series is edgy, like if you go back and read some of those fairy tales, I got some bad news for you.
And down will come baby, cradle and all.
Yeah, those things rarely have a happy ending. Like the Little Mermaid ended horrifyingly. Sequence got her legs was straight up a body horror sequence because her legs, and then like the legs were like the nerve endings didn't work right, and so every time she walked, felt like she was walking on like red hot needle pokers.
Wow,
that's awful.
That's terrible.
It's not the part that Disney included.
Yeah,
but that's just like kids. I feel like kids content. You know, you need an element of danger in there, and the bad guys should be scary because you know. They're the bad guys. You don't want the kids to relate to them too much. They're supposed to be the bad example. And so, you know, and evil, real evil is scary. And you want to have that in the story.
Yeah. I still cry when Bambi's mom gets shot.
I try not to think about that scene, quite frankly.
Wait, didn't they have a little bit of blood in that scene as well? And that was a Disney movie for G?
You never saw his mom's body in that movie.
Yeah, I don't think you didn't see his mom's body. You just heard the gunshot.
That's still
yeah, but it's still, I mean, it's still kind of harrowing. But yeah, so you know, even John, you make a good point. Even the older Disney films, like the animated films, had a harder edge to them, like Batman the Animated Series.
And they were
in
better.
fact, Tarzan, not even the older ones. Tarzan, the main villain hangs himself.
Yeah,
that is how he dies.
He falls to
a silhouette. You see the silhouette of his body like dangling, like lightning strikes, and so you don't hear people complain about that too often. But it is ultimately something even more grim than what happens in the show. The movie is more grim than the show. I'll admit that. The sequence where Batman finds the dead guy in the chair with that Cheshire grin, that was really intense. Like I was not expecting. And as a kid, like I said, that like freaked me out. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I genuinely did not see that coming in that movie.
Yeah, and there's a couple like off-color jokes in there. Kids probably won't get it.
Yeah.
But there's that sequence at the end where Joker is with that robot wife thing at that weird circus world. And, whenever she shows up, he's like, "Isn't it always the way? You get in the mood and company shows." That's to go right over a kid's head.
Oh
when I was like 15 and being like, "Hang on, wait a minute."
Oh yeah, I have seen so many movies that I haven't seen since I was a kid, and I just like had to pause and go, "Oh, that's what that meant." Because I had no idea what they meant. Yeah.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
But there's a few intense sequences in it. Of course, then again, once again, citing other films, like The Incredibles had an affair subplot.
Yeah. Right.
Where the wife suspects to see the husband's having an affair. And then Indiana Jones, the first Indiana Jones film, was actually rated PG. And at the end of that film, people's heads blow up.
Well, that was at a time where the 80's didn't have PG-13, right? Like
PG
they PG or 13 content.
Yeah. So but still, like parents, when the movie was advertised, like take your kids to this rip-roaring adventure with Indiana Jones, and they took them, and then there's that final sequence. I remember like turning on to that sequence on television when I was a kid. Just that sequence. And I was just like, what horror movie is this? And like, it ended, and I was like, oh, this is Indiana Jones. Bum, ba-dum, bum.
Well, it looks like I'm becoming an alcoholic early in life.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I aged prematurely.
Yeah.
I feel like honestly, with Mask of the Phantasm, show some caution because it does have some intense sequences. If your kid tends to be more sensitive towards grim imagery, maybe not. Maybe wait till they're a bit older. The animated series, for the most part, I mean, I feel like it's fine. It's not. You're not going to see anything in there that's so terrible that it's just going to mess your kid up or make them have too many nightmares.
Yeah. Well, I guess that closes out the majority of our discussion, guys. And that was, John, quite frankly, I feel like this was our best episode yet.
Well, Robert, time can never mend. The careless whispers of a good friend to the heart of the mind. Ignorance is kind. There's no comfort in truth. Pain is all you'll find. I'm never going to dance again, Robert. Guilty feet have no rhythm. Though it's easy to pretend, I know you're not a fool. I can't keep a straight face reading this.
Who the heck could, man? I ain't even sure what you're talking about right now. John has to have his weird poem or song at the end of it. Like it wouldn't be the So Yeah podcast without it. Oh,
very good song.
It's Careless, that's the name of the song, Careless Whisper. That's the song we referenced like at the very beginning.
Yeah, you don't notice it unless you're playing the saxophone, and none of us can play the saxophone right now to give us the close we truly need.
Well, I'll see if I can get Kenny G for our next podcast, see if he can help us out. No,
you need to see if you can find an unlicensed version of that we can play at the end of this.
Yeah, I'll find something to add to it. But
elevator pitch version.
Yeah. Or someone playing it really badly. That'd be a good one too.
Yeah. Here you go. All in all, guys, as always, thank you all for listening to the So Yeah podcast. We do have a Facebook, which is completely, I'm not going to post a thing on it until we have at least one follower. Like it does say that we have 3 likes and 3 followers, yet whenever I click on it, it says you have none. So I'm like, well, make up your mind, Facebook.
So probably private accounts.
Yeah. So once I start seeing some actual people on it, then I'll begin to post stuff and make it, an actual page. But until then, hey, become our lucky number 1, and I'll begin to put stuff on there for you. We also have a Twitter that I have yet to set up because not even the Facebook is being used. We have a Patreon, which I'm sure we'll get nothing from for a while, but hey, it is out there. And we're also on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube, like our YouTube, follow us on Spotify. I will close out the episode tonight, guys. As always, thank you all for listening. Thank you to John and Cody for being here on this episode. We will make sure to have an episode for you guys next month. It will not be part 2 of this series, but part 2 will certainly come out at some point. So, yeah.
Time can never mend. The careless whispers of a good friend to the heart of the mind. Ignorance is kind. There's no comfort in truth. Pain is all you'll find. I'm never going to dance again, Robert. Guilty feet have no rhythm. Though it's easy to pretend, I know you're not a fool. I can't keep a straight face reading this.